I want to go to 1986.
Yes.
Um, the incident, we'll talk about that, but an incident happens on April 8th, 1986, that you were not involved in whatsoever. But I always start here. Just tell me the young man that you were back in the day in 1986.
In 1986, mind you, I had just graduated from high school in 1984, in
Mm,
June of 1984. So I wasn't even out of high school a good year and a half before this incident transpired. The way I was raised and where I was raised was in South Central Los Angeles. My parents were, my mother was, um, she was a homemaker for many a years. My father was a highway patrol officer. And so we was born and raised in South Central LA as a middle class family. And it wasn't until the early 80s that my father decided to want to move us up out of there and into Downey, California. Unfortunately, my mother wasn't ready to move yet. By then, I was a teenager. And so, in coming up, I came up in a background where it was real regiment. My father, he came out the military. He came up out the South, Mississippi. Then he came to California with one mission and one mission only: to raise his family, and he didn't have to experience racism.
I want to make sure I have this right. Part of the reason why you get caught up in this incident is because was there a wanted poster? There was another charge that you were, I guess, put into, and that's how
Yes.
they just randomly found you. Okay.
Yeah, it was a transaction. I was paying the guy for the repairs of the engine. Another guy comes up and robbed the both of us.
Mm.
Now the auto mechanic, I mean, he's an auto mechanic. He has a gun in his pocket. He pulls the gun out to show, the guy, like, no, you're not finna rob us. In my foolishness, I grabbed the gun. I proceeded to chase the guy. The guy runs up to the corner. He has about maybe 25 yards on me. He runs up to the corner, and the next thing I hear is gunshots. The same guy that I chased to the corner, he come running back towards me, but he was shot and wounded. Well, I wasn't going to stick around and get shot and wounded, so I ran just like he did. And so when the guy got away, and when the police came and arrested every black male they can get their hands on that night, they learned that I was the one involved in the incident. So they wanted to talk to me and find out what had happened, because they knew they had shot the guy that had come around the corner. And when he had went around the corner, what made them shoot him was the fact that I had fired two shots in the air with the police with the auto mechanic's gun. Now, was that the right thing to do? No. Was that foolish? Yes, very foolish. Was it the right decision for a 19-year-old kid to make? No. Anyway, that led to a wanted poster being issued out for my arrest in the questioning of the incident. Now,
Gotcha.
quite naturally, police officers lie. So in order to find me, what they did was they put a wanted poster out for my arrest, and they claimed that I had shot 9 police officers.
Mm.
And that's how that wanted poster came about. Now, at the time of the incident, when that incident had happened, I didn't think nothing of it, because I wasn't the one that got shot, nor was I the one that shot at the police. So at the time, I had a child in Houston, not Houston, Texas, in Dallas, Texas. I had a baby mama who was about to deliver my first child. So I went to Texas to attend to that event. That happened. I stayed there for 3 months. Now, in the process of that happening in 3 months, this incident with the rape incident in Texas took place. Was that in Texas? Where did that place? It's been so damn long. I came in. Oh, in Riverside, California. I hate Riverside.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm in Texas at the time this incident taking place. So that's my alibi.
Right. And
You
let's
know,
just give some details. On
yes.
April 8th, 1986, a woman working at a shoe store said that she was sexually assaulted, raped, and robbed at gunpoint. It's a really brutal assault. She claims she's assaulted. And then there is this identification that you're talking about. She goes to police, and she was shown high school yearbooks, but she couldn't identify the suspects. She didn't identify you until she's taken to a police station, and they do this thing called a suggestive identification. And after seeing a wanted poster, she's shown this lineup and then identifies you as the assailant. But like you just said, it's bizarre because you've been in Texas for months at this point. So how do you find out that you're a suspect, and what are you thinking when this happens, knowing that
Okay.
you aren't even in the state?
First of all, I couldn't have said that any better. The way you just read that up. Okay. Um, when I had left Texas, I came back to California, and then I went to Arizona. All of this
Hmm.
happened within a month's time. When I got to Arizona, I went and visited a friend who lived in an apartment complex unit where if you didn't live in an apartment complex unit, you could be approached by the security that governed over the facility and you needed identification. And so I didn't have identification on me. And so when they came and approached me, I gave them a fake name. And then in giving them a fake name, the reason why I gave them a fake name is because I'm coming to visit my people and I don't want to be arrested. I mean, that's a typical wrong decision again. Um, when the person ran to making the name, they said, look, this don't add up. They didn't put handcuffs on me. They took me to Arizona, to Phoenix, Arizona County Jail, processed me in. And I said, well, look, man, y'all doing too much. He said, well, we're going to hold you here until we find out what your real name is. I said, I can beat you to the punch. My name is Herman Atkins. So they then went and ran a make on it. And then they came back and said, oh, Mr. Atkins, you're wanted in California for 9 counts of attempted murder on police officers in the city of Los Angeles. But in the city of Riverside, you're wanted for 2 counts of rape, 2 counts of oral copulation, 1 count of robbery, and 1 count of kidnap. I said, oh, no, you got the wrong guy. That ain't me. I don't even know what Riverside is, first and foremost. I was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. But since you want to trump up these charges and all of that, come on, let's what you got planned. So they told me that they have to extradite me back to California. No problem. I waive all of that. When they extradited me back to California and held me responsible for the charges, the 9 counts on attempted murder charge, that immediately was dropped. My family went and got a high-powered attorney by the name of Earl C. Brody Jr. He goes in there and they get to the bottom of the incident with the police. Once that matter was resolved, I owned up to what I did in that matter, firing a gun in the city limits, at which time I was sentenced to 6 years for that. But 2 years for the gun and 4 years for the incident. In other words, I pled no low contendere to it because you can hold me responsible, but I'm not going to admit to it. And the reason why I did it was because I was going to get back at the person that actually shot me. I mean, they robbed me. I knew exactly who he was. I just never told the police. Anyway, with that said,
Wait. Hold on 1 second, sir. You got 6 years in prison for
yes,
firing a gun 2 times in the
yes,
air?
yes,
Jeez, I just want to
yes.
make sure folks understood that. That's a lot.
Hey, that's a hell of a lot. Listen, we ain't done yet. So, uh, so when that was immediately addressed, then we start focusing on Riverside. I still haven't been to Riverside or arraignment yet. Now I have been in the custody of CDC for 2 years before they took me to Riverside to address this case. So they took me out of prison, sent me to Riverside, and I was able to address this matter in 1988. Now, mind you, I've been in custody already since 1986.
Mm.
I went in 87. I finally got in custody in 87. The matter with the LA incident was resolved. I went into prison, and then in 1988, February of 1988, I was sent to Riverside County to address this matter, at which time I then learned about all of the facts in the matter. And I thought that, oh, I'm finna beat this because the facts in the matter don't add up to the truth in the matter. And so I told my attorney everything where I was at the time this incident transpired. Family members would come in here and tell you about it. I got a doctor that could tell you I was actually in the operating room watching my son being delivered when this happened. That didn't matter, none of that. We went to trial, learned these facts in the matter. A white woman called the police, said she had been raped. The police come into the scene. In a broad daylight at 11 o'clock in the morning, a woman is hollering, hey, I'm at a shoe store. I'm being raped in broad daylight. Police is on the scene within 2 minutes. That means they were already in the area. Then they start searching for a black male before they even went and talked to the female. When they searched the area and couldn't find a black male in the area, they went and talked to the female. The female told them she had been raped. They take her to the police station, and everything you stated, that's exactly what had happened. She pinpointed me out of a wanted poster. Now, this is where it got strange with me. When I was ready for my arraignment in Paris, California, in Lake Elsinore, California, I go into a arraignment where I'm the only black male on the chain with 7 white guys. We go into the courtroom. My name is called. My attorney is not there yet. The DA tells the judge that my attorney is on his way and that we need to postpone the court until later on afternoon. The judge agreed to that. The DA puts the file down, gets up, walks over into the audience, and then sits next to this old towback ass white girl. He sits down next to her and he asks her a question that I hear plain as day. Do you see the man that raped you? And she looks right over at me and says, yeah. The bailiff is in back of me, literally standing in back of me, telling me to look forward. And if I don't, he's going to bust my head when I get back into the holding tank. So all of this was staged. When my attorney come, I tell her what had happened. She addressed it in the courts just to get it on record. It was at that moment that I realized I am finna be railroaded. It's at that moment I realized that I was uncovered. It was at that moment that I realized that racism 101, this is the stuff that my grandmother used to talk about.
How you have proof that you're not in the state? How in the world did a jury convict you? Did they think you were Superman? Like how? I just this. I mean, I know this is a deeply racist system, but damn, there's proof that you're not in the state. So you must be sitting there like, what the hell is going on? But how in the world does? What was their logic of convicting you? How did it happen?
Let me tell you what I realized. This right here, and it was so hurtful years later. See, I grew up naive. My parents didn't raise us to hate. And they especially didn't raise us to hate anything outside of our own skin color. They raised us to help, to assist, and to advise. That's just how we were raised. So when I'm looking at 12 people, I'm thinking this is a matter of common sense. And I realized that racist people's sense is not common. Had one jury woman, this woman was, she was one of them, like, we didn't know privilege. Like today, they yell privilege or they act like they have privilege. This woman had that shit back then and set up in a jury trial like, this is a white woman. How dare this nigger? That was her attitude throughout the whole trial. But before we selected her, that woman said that everything that she had ever heard about a black person came from the news, the TV. I'm like, bitch, where you live at? I'm seriously thinking, where in the fuck you live at? And I was 19 then at the time in 1988. I've been around a whole gang of white folks. Where do you live at where everything you have ever heard about a black person, where you've never encountered a black, and this effort was about, you hear when I use words like that because I still have some anger in me. It's some unfinished business with me in Riverside. We'll get to that. But that woman sat there, man, and she had that privilege, and I just knew this effort's finna do me. But the ones that got me the most was the 2 blacks that was on my jury. I realized this right here about black folks. We're just as prejudiced, especially towards one another. than white folks are towards us. These two individuals sat there and they judged me before I was even convicted. Sat there, I watched them. Like, I'm like, their attitude was like this. They strove hard. You know that pull yourself up by the bootstrap? Yeah.
Yeah, Booker T.
That it was
Washington.
it was it was that mentality that they had. It was that mentality that they had. And when the verdict came back, it was I got it. It all 12 found me guilty. All 12 people found me guilty. And in that moment, my life changed forever. It changed my thought process. It changed what I thought about people. It changed what I thought about white folks. And everything that my parents taught me went right out the damn window. The day I was found guilty, I was put in, I was brought back and put in my tank. And there was a officer. I would never forget him. His name, he was a sheriff's officer. His name was Zarate. He had heard when he came in on the second shift, he had heard that I had got tried and found guilty. He came in and he opened the cell and he said, Atkins, step out. And I stuck my head out like that. And I saw him at the other end. He opened the gate. He said, step out. I stepped out. He hurried up and closed the gate so nobody else can come out. He told me to come towards him. He put me in handcuffs and he took me to a padded cell. And he told me like this. He said, look, when you're ready to come out, I'm gonna come check on you every hour. And when you're ready to come out, you let me know. What I didn't know then is that this guy was so wise. He had seen us all come and go, getting convicted. He had a solution for that. So he put me in this padded cell, and I stayed in that padded cell for 4 hours, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried till I couldn't cry no more. And I made myself a promise: nobody will ever make me cry again. I experienced that kind of hurt and pain. Now that was a promise I made myself, but that wasn't a promise that life itself honored. Because after 14 years, when I came home, while I was incarcerated, I never saw my mother. They wouldn't let her come in to visit me. And so when I came home, a year, 8 months later, my mother died from esophagus cancer. So um, when he had put me in that cell, that hurted so bad that I know for a fact I became a monster. I started preparing myself for what was to come because I had never been to youth authority. I'd never been to juvenile hall. And I knew I was going to the penitentiary. I'm 20 years of age. I weigh 145 pounds wet. I stand 5'11". I look like I'm 16 years of age. And I'm finna head to the penitentiary. This is those movies we read about, Scared Straight. Everything that when I saw those movies and anything I ever heard about the penitentiary, it came down on me. And now I don't know what to do.
And just so
All I
folks
know,
know, you were sentenced to 47 years and 8 months. 47 years and 8 months. When you go behind bars, like you said, you're a kid. You're basically still a child. Uh, how are you surviving? How are you surviving?
first thing first, I went to the first place they sent me because of the type of sentence. I had to do the time on level 4 and level 5 institutions. First place they sent me was Old Folsom. Old Folsom looked like one of them Captain Grayskull cartoon character
Hmm.
castles,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
old
yeah.
like that. And when I got there, the day I got there, it was a gloomy day. It was on the verge of raining. And they put us in reception center and they held us outside while they processed us in paperwork and got our clothes and blankets and all that stuff together. And I remember that day I made myself a promise that I would protect my manhood, my mind, and my life at all costs. It was at that moment where it was going to be do or die. Once I got in there and got acclimated into prison, I then blocked the world out because I learned immediately where I was at and the fact that it's a strong possibility I would never make it home. Being labeled as a rapist and a child molester, in prison, you're treated lower than the dirt you walk on. I was not going to PC up, meaning go into protective custody. I wasn't a gang member. I stood alone, didn't know nobody. And so the way I acclimated myself in, I got in trouble. COs would tell me, Atkins, this, that, and other. My reply, fuck you. You put me in here, kill me. I don't give a damn. Within the first 3 years of my being incarcerated, my family lost contact with me, and I wound up doing what you call a SHOOT program. It's called a segregated housing unit. They wouldn't feed me one morning. And I think that the CEO was just fucking with me. It was a bad day. It was a bad morning. So I took some batteries and I put it in a sock and I made a sap type weapon. And I waited for the correctional officer to come past the door. And I started hitting the door with the sap weapon type weapon, but I knew it would bust the window. I just wanted the timing right. And I got it right. And when I bust the window, the glass hit the CO and all of the batteries and stuff went out on the tier. And the alarm was hit. They came rushing in. And this was the first time I experienced cell extraction. I was 22 years old. They ran up in there with this tube type thing, a shield, and they pinned me in the back of the cell, pinned me down to the ground. I'm literally in a fetal position with 4 police literally on top of me with the shield. And they're telling me, don't move, don't move. I'm telling them I can't breathe. I can't breathe. It just so happened that the sergeant who governed over the incident told them to get up off of me. Of course, I got an ass beaten, but then I wound up in the SHOE program and I did 16 months in it. While I was in there, I had a guy named Michael Stokes. He told me, he said, look, man, he said, I've seen you brothers come back here. And many of y'all staying back here. He said, what's your problem? And I told him what I was in there for. And he said, look, man, if what you're saying is true, you need to get your ass back out on the main line, get in them law books and study and find out why them people did what they did to you and got away. And it was in that moment I snapped back into reality. And in that moment, I decided to do the time. And in that moment, I got out of the SHOE program. I got into the law library, and I discovered the Innocent Project. And so that's how I did my time. I started studying. I read every book I could possibly get my hands on. I didn't ask for packages. I asked for books. Carter G. Woodson said that the best education that a Black man can have in this country is the education he gives to himself. And I spent 14 years educating myself. That's how I did that time.
Wow. I do want to say the Innocence Project, they managed to do some incredible work, and it was
Oh,
DNA evidence, and also you doing the work reaching out, but it's eventually DNA evidence that exonerated you. Again, the story you just told, you're not even in the state. It still don't make any sense, but they had to exonerate you after, and this isn't, I mean, any of us could have told them that, but there isn't a stitch of your DNA on
the
victim,
sweater. Yes.
the sweater, because not to be too graphic, y'all, but there was semen on her sweater and so on, and that was not you at all. So they have to exonerate you. Tell me, well, first before I get to that, you said your mother passed away, and I'm so sorry to hear that. And I do so many of these interviews, and the things that the family goes through. How was your father affected? Because your father was a police officer at one point. So how was your dad affected by this?
He was deeply hurt. To give you an idea of what I say to be true, my father, shortly after I came home, my father retired. Everybody wanted to throw him the big bash. He said, no. His colleagues wanted to give him the big bash and give him that, send him off with the watch and the pension and all that. He said, no, just give me my pension. I went and talked to my father. It was an interview we did with Vindicated. And in that, he finally expressed what his process was about his son doing time. My father said that it was an act of treason to the very thing that he dedicated his life to. If you go to the documentary that I did called After Innocence, my father said therein, he said that he went with the evidence instead of the love of the child. My father is being taunted by that to this very day. My father is now suffering from Alzheimer's. He don't remember me or the situation. If I believe in God strongly, I also believe in the adversary, the enemy, the devil. And if I've ever seen him work and tear down somebody's family, it was mine.
Mm. And you were
As far
finally released February 18th, 2000, after 13 years and 10 months. And you're 34 years old at the time when you're released. So this is all of your 20s and half of your 30s behind bars. Uh, how did that feel in that moment when you finally get your freedom? And again, due to the work of the Innocence Project and your advocacy for yourself, but how did you feel when you're finally free in February of 2000?
well, one of the things you can do, you yourself, you can go to YouTube and type in Herman Atkins release, and you can see the release that very day. It was a bittersweet pill to swallow for the simple fact that after the 14 years, I saw my mother for the first time. And the woman that I saw standing in that visiting room waiting on me to come out was the shell of the woman that I remembered. It was a bittersweet pill because one of my sons, who before I went in, he had just been born. Now he's there. He's 14 years old. He had never saw his father before. It was a bittersweet pill because now I'm looking at my siblings who had come to get me, and they are grown and they have kids and their kids have kids. It was a bittersweet pill to swallow because the one person I wanted to see, I didn't see until days later. I figured she would have been the one that was just right there, because she came to see me in prison, which was my grandmother. We called her Big Mom. But I didn't see Big Mom until like 4 or 5 days after I had come home, not realizing that, time, just when I was doing time, my family members done time with me. My grandmother had gotten so old when I saw her. Old. Oh, in comparison when she came to visit me like 7 years earlier.
I don't know if you know this, but did the victim of this assault ever, I mean, clearly these horrible prosecutors and DAs, they don't give a damn, but did the victim ever apologize? Did she ever own up to, oh, I had the wrong person or anything of that nature?
No, not only that, none of them did. Only one person in that whole situation apologized to me. Remember when I told you that when the victim said that the crime had transpired, police officers were on the scene within 2 minutes because they were already in the area? Well, that
Yes.
police officer doing a deposition, he told him off the top in Johnny Cochran's office. He said, wait a minute, I want to talk to him. This is a white man. They said, came and told me he wants to talk to you. I ain't got no problem with it. That dude looked me in my face and he said, I want you to understand, if I had anything to do with you being wrongfully convicted, as a man, I apologize to you. I accepted his apology, but I later realized that he had become an alcoholic. He had got divorced. 2 of his children was now having problems. But that's karma. That's karma. The victim never, ever apologized. And this is what she said. Well, if he didn't do it, if he didn't do that, then maybe he done something else. And that's why he went to prison for something he didn't do.
Wow.
Hey, we got this in writing. We have this in writing. We was trying to get her in trial. Bring her ass into trial. But the DA, the attorney for Riverside, they didn't want to talk about, we don't want to bring her in and drag her through such a trauma all over again. Well, hell, I wasn't the one that did the shit. So bring her
Right.
ass up in here. They were like, no, if y'all want to call her, y'all can call her. Peter and them felt as though, Peter Neufeld, who was my attorney, they felt as though, nah, they had already had the case won and they didn't want to bring her in. But I begged them, bring her ass up in here. The heifer never, she's a heifer to me. And anybody take offense to it, fuck you. That heifer still ain't apologized today. So I want her to understand, you ain't got to apologize. I forgive you, but you shall be judged by the deeds of your hands.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to talk about your work with the Innocence Project and hopefully some future work with the Innocence Project. So please tell me about that.
I'll tell you about that only if you allow me to say a statement.
Please.
I want to say something. I want to say something to Riverside. I'm not Riverside, to the Innocent Project, its original founders and its current staff members. I've been good to Riverside. I mean, I keep saying Riverside. I've been good to the Innocent Project, and the Innocent Project most definitely has been good to me. I've traveled this nation speaking on judicial reform, working with the Innocent Project. The Innocent Project has done great things. I think that Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld should be nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. However, I dedicated my life to the Innocent Project. I've been home for 21 years. Before I came home, I made God a promise. If you allow me to share my story, if you will give me a platform to speak on, I'll do that for you. He gave me that over a 20-year period of time. Now, before the pandemic, I went to New York for a gala and plus personal business. I had a chance to stop in and see my friends and the development that they made. The Innocent Project is on the move. When I say they on the move, they have something now. When I came home, they only had the school and they all was in this little area. Now they have a whole floor. They are over there doing great things. They have a policy department. They are making laws now. I got to be a part of that. I want a job in their policy department, representing them here on the West Coast. I've been representing them for 20 years. I want a job in the Innocent Projects policy department, working with Rebecca Brown here on the West Coast. If you don't give me the job, I'm going to retire. I'm going to do what's in my spirit. I don't have to do what's in my spirit because I went to God about the matter. Give me that job. Failure to do so, I shall retire, and I will no longer speak of the Innocent Project. I thank you for all that you have done, and I'm so ever grateful. But it's time to move on. You either give me that job I want and allow me to help grow in the direction y'all want to go in now, or I'm gonna have to go in another direction. And you'll hear Herman Atkins Sr. again, but you just won't hear me talk about the Innocent Project ever again.
I hear you, brother. I definitely hear you. Last question before you go. I just want to ask you, it's been 20 years, but we talk about PTSD, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious to know, how do you navigate relationships? How do you navigate friendships, love, considering this experience you had when you were in your early 20s? And again, it's been 20 years, but where are you where are you now? Just a matter of being able to trust people and all of that after everything that you went through.
Real quick, when I came home, I wanted to become a psychologist. I have 2 degrees in the field of psychology, one in child development, the other one in human behavior. I wanted to line myself with the Innocent Project and give them much needed psychological therapy to exonerees that was going to need it. Because when I was going through school, I knew I'm messed up to this very day. I got issues. I cannot maintain a relationship with women because I'm real hard. I'm strict. This is what they tell me. You're too stern. You don't want to have fun. You don't smile. You don't. Why would you go in and talk to people that you shouldn't even be talking to? Why do you feel like you got to get a receipt to prove everywhere you went? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? I had one person told me this right here. She said, you know what? She said, I can love you. She said, but you are tense. And she said, I don't want to be intensified every day. Like, damn, that says a lot about me and my character. So I went to my God and I asked my God, the same discipline that I had while I was incarcerated about a relationship, I blocked all of that out. I don't want a relationship now. I just want to do God's will. That's it. I would date. I have no problem in dating and what have you, but it'll take a special woman to deal with me. And I just don't think there's one on the face of this earth that can deal with Herman Atkins Sr.
Mm. Well, Mr. Atkins, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I really hope the Innocence Project really hears, what you said, and really takes that in. Again, you spent 13 years and 10 months behind bars for a crime you did not commit. You are now a free man, and it sounds like since you've been released 20 years ago, February of 2020. I'm sorry, February of 2000 rather, that you really have been doing God's work. So I want to thank you for coming on this show and sharing your story, Mr. Atkins. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Can
I
folks
want to
follow
think,
you and support you? And are
excuse
you
me?
on social media in any capacity? Can folks follow
Yes,
you? Okay,
yes. Two things real quick. I've
sure.
written a book. It's in the hands of the editor. We're waiting for it to be released, so be expecting that.
Yes.
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
There you go.
um, yeah, and TikTok. Let me see. What else am I doing? I'm waiting for my results. I'm waiting to finish law school, wrap that up, and go and become the famous lawyer that God destined me to be. I'm gonna replace Johnny Cochran.
If it
Yeah.
doesn't fit, you have to acquit.
Hey, I want you to I want you to understand something. And so with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to do the interview. And with that, I want to close and let everybody know here's going to be a part of what God put in my spirit. And so if they don't give me this job, this is what you're going to hear next. My name is Herman Atkins Sr. I am a messenger of God. I'm the new modern day man of God. Most importantly, I'm God's number one hype man. Thank
That's
you
a
for
great
having
way
me.
to end it.